Hello and welcome to the West Asia Post with me, Ghadi Francis. This is our weekly show where we bring you all the latest updates and stories from this region that I call home. Another American president is visiting the region. Joe Biden is embarking on his maiden West Asia trip next month. He is set to visit Israel and the West Bank, but the most awaited part of this trip is his meeting with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Now Biden will head to Jeddah after vowing to make the Crown Prince a pariah less than a year ago. So does this mean that the United States and Saudi Arabia are finally burying the hatchet? We tell you.
Just over a year ago, US President Joe Biden wanted to make the Saudi Crown Prince a pariah. But now he is jetting off to Saudi Arabia to meet the same person whom he wanted to isolate. Next month, Biden will embark on his first West Asia trip as president. On the agenda are a lot of issues. The trip begins only on July 13th. It is a 3-day visit to the region. Biden will visit Israel, the West Bank and Jeddah. The tour starts with meeting Prime Minister Naftali Bennett in Israel. This is a country Biden first visited nearly 50 years ago as a senator. Currently, the Biden administration's top priority in Israel is the survival of the Bennett coalition. With another MP pulling out, the coalition is far too short of a majority in the parliament. This means the government could collapse anytime. US officials say Biden's planned visit to Israel will take place, regardless of the domestic political situation in Israel. The president is also likely to reaffirm the ironclad commitment to Israel's security. From there, it is a short trip to Bethlehem. This is where Biden is likely to meet Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. The focus remains on re-establishing Palestinian links and stressing on the U.S. commitment to the two-state solution. Reports suggest that the U.S. even talked about a summit with both Israel and Palestine, but the idea was vehemently rejected by Israel. PLO is also demanding that U.S. should open the Jerusalem consulate before the visit. The part of the trip that will make history and generate the most chatter comes at the end. Biden's visit to Jeddah. But what is even ironic is his flight path. Biden will fly directly from Israel to Jeddah. This will be the first flight ever taken by a US president from Israel to an Arab state, especially since Saudi Arabia and Israel have not normalized ties. Biden's meet with the Crown Prince is the key focus of the visit. Saudi Arabia has been a US ally for over 70 years. The two countries have had a security for oil relationship. It began 8 decades ago with Franklin D. Roosevelt and King Ibn Saud. This relationship lasted through 14 U.S. presidencies until Biden. Under the Biden presidency, everything changed. He did not call Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The released declassified intelligence reports on Khashoggi's killing and documents looking into Saudi's connection to the 9/11 attacks. Since then, the US-Saudi relationship has been on the rocks. But with this visit, it looks like Biden is finally ready to make concessions. He was once dismissive of the prince, but now he clearly needs Saudi Arabia on his side. Clearly, this is a major climb down from his campaign promises. Meanwhile, MBS is on the verge of getting what he wants, recognition from the US president. So why is Washington pivoting so hard now? The Russian invasion has thrown up new geopolitical realities. The United States needs Saudi Arabia for oil again. Riyadh needs Washington for defense and security again. Currently, the US president has a huge domestic liability. Gas prices are surging in his country, prices that Saudi Arabia could help lower. Also, the Crown Prince is young. He is likely to lead the kingdom for decades. So, a rapprochement had to happen at some point.
It's a real pleasure.
Reports even suggest Saudi could announce normalization during the visit, and Israel normalization could be Biden's price for meeting MBS. But it is not just the Crown Prince Biden is meeting. Once there, Biden will attend the Gulf Cooperation Council meet with leaders from Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. He will also be joined by the leaders of Egypt, Iraq, and Jordan.
First of all, express my gratitude.
Also on the agenda is a one-of-its-kind virtual summit-level meeting. This will be with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, and the new UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed. This is a part of the I2U2 country grouping, also commonly known as the West Asian Quad. They say that a United States president comes of age in West Asia. For years, America has been a key player in the region. The 46th US president has already hit many bumps here. How he deals with it could be what defines his presidency in the region. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
We're going to Iraq, Syria, and much more in this edition of the West Asia Post. But first, as usual, let's take a look at what else is making the headlines across West Asia.
A senior leader of the Islamic State militant group has been captured in Syria during a US-led coalition raid, according to the Pentagon. US also added no civilian or military member was harmed during the operation. Saudi Arabia is seizing rainbow-colored toys and articles of clothing from shops in an apparent crackdown on homosexuality in the kingdom. Officials say the colors send a poisoned message to children. According to a new report, 80% of children in the Gaza suffer from depression, sadness, and fear. This has been caused by 15 years of the Israeli blockade in the Strip. Turkish national carrier has changed its name to Turkiye Airlines. President Erdogan says Turkiye Hava Yolları will be inscribed on the bodies of Turkiye Airlines planes from now on. Saudi Arabia has eased its mask mandate as the first Hajj pilgrims arrive in the kingdom. It comes as Riyadh prepares to welcome around 850,000 people from abroad for the annual Hajj pilgrimage.
The Israeli coalition government has completed a year, with many, including former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, predicting its downfall. The government is still hanging by a thread, but the situation is getting harder by the day. With another MP's exit, Bennett says that the coalition may collapse in a week. So what does this mean for the Jewish state? We tell you.
In Israel, it has been a year of compromise and negotiations. This is the Jewish state's most diverse government. Spanning from the hard left to the hard right, the coalition began the year with a clear agenda. On foreign policy, it scored some wins, from the historic UAE-Israel Free Trade Agreement, marking 30 years of ties with its key ally India, to hosting the Negev Summit with the US, UAE, Egypt, Bahrain and Morocco. Closer home, the problems were bigger. The government faced a wave of terror attacks. There was violence at Al-Aqsa, triggered by visits of Jewish groups. And a conflict with Hamas is still looming. In recent weeks, the coalition has been rocked by instability. Both the left and the right wing have the same claim. The government has swung too far to the other side. There have been defections. Coalition members are refusing to vote with the government, and threats of further dissatisfaction ahead. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett says the coalition could collapse in a week or two. This comes after another lawmaker quit the government. Nur Orbach is the third Yamina MP to desert Bennett. The Prime Minister now has just 4 party members in the coalition. If the government fails, Israel could be staring at its 5th election in over 2 years. But what will this mean for Yair Lapid? In 2023, the Israeli leader was supposed to become Prime Minister in the rotation agreement. Last week, a survey asked Israelis what they thought about a new election.
I am very happy because Bennett is a good man, and he's man. He looked all the people, no only here, only Bennett. That's it.
I'm not very happy about this government. This government is doing just bad for Israel. I think Benjamin Netanyahu was my favorite and most of the Israelis' favorite.
In all 3 scenarios, the numbers fluctuated for almost all the parties, except one, the Yesh Atid party. In the polls, Yesh Atid consistently received the same number of seats. Strangely, perhaps, it looks as though Yair Lapid is closer than ever to becoming Prime Minister. If the members vote to dissolve the Knesset, Lapid will immediately become Prime Minister. However, this is only until a new government is sworn in. On any other day, this would mean good news for Benjamin Netanyahu. But the Likud party leader is facing rebellion himself. His party members are disagreeing with him, so he is not exactly in a great shape himself. The coalition government can only survive with only 59 seats until March 2023. This is when a new budget has to be approved. For now, it is impossible for Netanyahu to form a new government. He does not have the support of 61 lawmakers. But if last-minute defections do take place, Israel is staring at another election, its 5th in a span of more than 2 years. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
It has been 8 months since Iraq's parliamentary elections, but the country is still without a new government. Now, Iraqi influential cleric and biggest winner in Iraq's October parliamentary elections, Muqtada al-Sadr, has had enough. He ordered the Sadrist movement bloc to submit its resignation. And the question now is, why did al-Sadr choose to go down this route, and what will happen next? Will this be the end of the political deadlock in Iraq, or will it even cause more chaos? We bring you the story. This is Muqtada al-Sadr. He was once wanted dead or alive during the US occupation. Since then, the influential cleric has gone to become a kingmaker, one of the most powerful figures in Iraq's politics. But even Sadr's influence could not end Iraq's political deadlock. 8 months after elections, the country still does not have a government. Sadr proved unable to end a prolonged stalemate. So on Sunday, lawmakers from his Sadrist bloc in parliament resigned. This was after he asked them to step down.
There remained what they call a political deadlock, and I call it a deliberate deadlock. If the Sadrist bloc remains an obstacle to the formation of the government, all members of parliament of the Blessed Bloc are ready to resign from the parliament.
Sadr's party won the biggest share of seats in the parliament, but he was frustrated at not being able to form a government. So the cleric withdrew from politics. This has steered Iraqi politics into uncharted territory.
I decided to withdraw from the political process so as to not be involved with the corrupt politicians, neither in this world nor the hereafter.
Sadr's exit has raised the stakes in the struggle for Iraq. This is a major political escalation. It could lead to conflict with his Iran-backed rivals, or force a compromise in their tussle over government. It also points to a deepening struggle for influence in the Shiite community. Sadr's move has presented his Iran-backed rivals with a major dilemma. In theory, they could now form an administration of their choosing, but in reality, analysts say such a move would likely provoke unrest and even conflict with Sadr's vast support base. For Iran, the latest twist in Iraq's political crisis is an unwelcome development. It shows the underlying intra-Shiite fissures in the country. Sadr has positioned himself as an opponent of US and Iranian influence, but he has not detailed his reasons for quitting parliament. In a handwritten note, he described it as, quote-unquote, a sacrifice for the homeland. Currently, Sadr's Iran-backed opponents appear to be moving cautiously. They are well aware of his capacity to mobilize. Sadr, on the other hand, has not declared his next move. As for Iraq, it still remains without a government. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One. Climate change is no stranger to West Asia. But with the COP27 just 6 months ago, what are the region's goals? Global climate talks are coming to the hottest and driest part of the planet. One that is being battered by heat waves, sandstorms, and water crises. So how will West Asia manage to transition to clean energy as it ramps up oil production? Let's take a look.
Blistering heat waves, bone-dry conditions, generational droughts, shrinking forests, and polluted waters. This is the reality of West Asia, a land that is no stranger to conflicts, but seldom ones with nature. From floods in Turkey, sandstorms in Iraq, wildfires in Lebanon, and droughts in Iran, climate crises are not new here, but very little has been done to tackle it. Freak weather conditions are now the new normal, and evidence suggests there will be more to come. Climate summits put the issue front and center, but the alarm bells have been ringing for some time. For years, West Asia has been shaped by conflicts, but this time, climate change is redefining the region. All the nations here are dependent on each other, but currently, they remain distracted. The push for net zero has become a rally call. Gulf nations are pushing for a net zero future. The goals need to be bigger, the actions louder than words. Most states have announced their net zero targets. Still, Gulf Arab states keep extracting oil and gas. They call fossil fuels an integral part of the energy transition, claiming that it cannot be phased out rapidly. Most called for more and more investment into the industry just to keep up with the demand across the world. COP27 is taking place this November in Egypt on the Red Sea coast. COP28 will be hosted by Dubai in 2023. The region has not hosted a COP meeting since 2012, when Qatar became the first West Asian country to hold the event. But just hosting summits is not enough. What the region needs is concrete climate action. West Asia is no stranger to conflicts. But if there is any that has no regard for borders or politics, it is climate change. The region is tackling freak weather every day, and hitting the snooze button on a climate catastrophe is getting more and more difficult with each day. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
Tourists are returning to Syria. An ancient fortress, Qal'at al-Jabar, has now become a tourist hotspot. It was once an Islamic State hideout in the country. Now this comes as European travel agencies have partnered with the Syrian government for more and more tourism. In our next report, we tell you the story about this war-scarred nation now looking into reviving its tourism. Let's go to Syria.
This was once an ancient lakeside fortress. Then it was used by the Islamic State to launch attacks. Now it is slowly regaining its status as a key tourist spot, attracting visitors from across war-torn Syria. Families posed for pictures under the hot June sun, some perched on an ancient brick wall. The Qal'at Jabar overlooks the banks of Lake Assad, a man-made reservoir in northern Syria's Raqqa province. The landmark has attracted more and more visitors this summer. This comes as the security situation in the area has improved drastically.
I had not visited the fortress in almost 10 years due to the war and the problems we faced, preventing us from coming here.
It dates back to the Seljuk and Mamluk periods. This was considered one of Syria's most preeminent fortresses. The castle became an island when Lake Assad was formed in the year 1974. Qal'at Jabar is connected to the mainland by a thin causeway. It has 35 bridges and a mosque. It was once used to shelter a museum with dozens of artifacts, but that was ransacked by the Islamic State. The site lies around 50 kilometers from Raqqa city, the once de facto Syrian capital of ISIS Caliphate. In the year 2017, US-backed Kurdish fighters retook the fortress. Since the last year, tourists are returning to this fort.
We came on a trip. My daughter kept telling me, take us to Jabar, because she learnt about it at school, so we came here.
Are you happy?
Thank God we are happy with our visit.
Boat rides and picnics on Lake Assad's sandy shores are now popular. The citadel is back to being a popular destination for families. Outside the towering walls, young men laid food as loud Arabic music blasted around them, a sign of normalcy after years of war. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
That's all we have for you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week with a brand new lineup, bringing you more stories from the world's most volatile region. Until then, stay safe. I am Ghadi Francis, and you're watching WION World is One.